Okay, so we're live and we're recording, and this is the part where we find out if everybody stuck around because I know we were a little late. So if you were patient and you were waiting for this webinar to start, thank you so much. Yes, there are people and they're coming. Thank you so much. I'm just so glad that this all worked out. Yay! I am here with Andrea.
Andrea.
Andrea, I'm gonna get it. Listen, friends.
We having a whole time tonight. Look, y'all in the place to be because it's already 6 minutes in. All the things.
Listen. I know you had a full day. I had a full day. It's the second day of Black History Month. Like, we're just cutting all the way up. Like, we're clearly cutting all the way up.
Why not? Why not be late and do? Yeah, I mean.
So we gonna get it. We just gonna get it. All right. Hi friends. This is Kira Wilson Cook. I am beaming in from the Silver Unicorn bookstore in Acton, Mass. I'm not actually in the bookstore. I am in my house. But I am just so delighted to talk about for the next hour this beautiful book. This is Baseball's Leading Lady, and it is about the story. So I keep saying Effa. Please tell me I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are.
Okay, good. Effa Manley, who is the first and only woman. She's still the only woman in the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Yes.
That is crazy. We're going to talk all about this. I am so excited. I want to let y'all know that this is a webinar for our safety and for yours. I disabled the chat just because it seemed like a good thing to do. But if you have questions for Andrea, please, Andrea. Did I say it right this time?
Andrea.
I'm going to get it. I don't know why I'm overthinking this. I am overthinking this.
Like
Andrea.
Sis, friend, girl.
No, we don't get Andrea. Like, I should get Andrea. Like, I should be able to get Andrea. Like, it's not hard. I don't know why. I want to go I don't know what I want to do.
I mean, I'll answer to all the things though. Like, don't even worry about it.
It's like, it should not be this difficult anyway. So if you have questions for Miss Andrea Williams, who is a journalist, who is a author, who is a historian, this is your evening to do that. This is such a special book. I read it cover to cover because it's my job, but also because it's awesome. And I just have so many questions for you. So I'm just so grateful that you're here. I know that it's been a long day for you because you are very popular, because this book is awesome. So I'm grateful for this hour of your time. And I hope that it is as fun as I think it's going to be. I really honestly do. So I want to get started with just a question about you and your encounter with this woman. And I say encounter because I think that, especially as we go through Black History Month, we hear the same 5 names and we know that, right? And then you go through a museum or you go into the world and you see a placard, and all of a sudden there's a new name or a new face and a new story that kind of opens up a whole other world of Black history. And so I feel like for Effa, there is an encounter here that kind of sets you on a journey to tell her story. So I'd love to know a little bit about what that encounter is, and how that ends up getting to this beautiful thing.
Yeah. It was absolutely an encounter. I got a job at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City right after undergrad. My degree is in sport management, and the plan was to I wanted to work in the front office of a Major League Baseball team. Ascend to the ranks of general manager, and I really saw at the time me working at the museum as this sort of pit stop. I went to school in Georgia, originally from Kansas City, so I wanted to go back home. And this position, it felt like just a great place to spend like a couple years while I figured out like the grad school thing, while I took a break before I did the MBA, JD, all the stuff. And yeah, Bob Kendrick, who's the president now, gave me a tour of the museum, and that was where I had my encounter with Effa. Again, I had this track. I wanted to run a baseball team on the business side of it, and was always looking for like, who are the people who have done this? Who are the women that I can look to? At the time, Kim Eng, who is now she's a general manager of the Miami Marlins, the first woman to hold that position. She was an assistant GM at with the Yankees. And I remember, like hearing about her and what she was doing. And I was like, yeah, she's going to beat me. She's going to be the first woman. It was fine. Like, I'm not mad at that. It took till 2020. So that's a whole other thing. But yeah, when I learned about Effa and that she did all the things and she was the one in charge in the 30s and 40s, my mind was like absolutely blown. First of all, even to see her picture, like at the museum, it is set up chronologically so that you have to follow the whole history of Black baseball. And then you get dumped out onto the field of legends, which is where we have these like life-size bronze statues of some of the greatest players to ever pick up a bat and glove. So you've got Satch and Josh and Oscar Charleston and Buck Leonard and all of these incredible players. And as you work your way around, this is like before we get to Mamie Johnson and Tony Stone and these women who actually took the field and played in the 50s. Here we've got in the 30s and 40s this picture of this woman, with this guy as a picture. And I immediately like was drawn to her, and I was like, Bob, who is that? Like, why is she, you don't expect to see that in a baseball museum. So yeah, Bob told me about her story, and then I, went and dug in on my own and started reading and researching, and I was like, all right, yeah, she's the one. She's the one.
Yeah. She is the one. She's amazing.
She's amazing. Now to get to the book you held up, it's so beautiful, isn't it?
It is. Yes, it really is so beautiful. We should talk about that design too. We'll get to that. Yes.
But yeah, I wish that like the museum encounter to book was like as succinct the story. It's not. It was like lots and lots and lots of, I am a journalist. I started having babies and got into writing full time and was a journalist first, and then, went into ghost and co-writing. I want to help people tell their stories. I want to do it in more than 1,500 words. And then, but to get to the point of, I'm going to write my own book. Now, I tell people that like, the spirit of Effa Manley has been on my shoulder like since that first encounter in like 2004. So it's a long time coming, but yeah, imposter syndrome is real. So, it took a while to get to the point where I was like, all right, I can do this. And then there was the whole, like, how do I tell the story, and ultimately, and I know you wanted to talk about like why I wrote it for kids, but, all of that was part of the process. Even when I got to the point of like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Like, what is the form that it should take? And, finally deciding on doing this nonfiction treatment and doing it for kids took a little while. But once we were there, it was off to the races. Publishing, was really behind it. The book was really well received when I went out on submission to editors at publishing houses. And yeah, everybody was really excited about this story that like nobody knew, this woman doing all the things back then. So yeah.
And so now the source material you have multiple sources, like many. You give us a beautiful list in the back, but it seems like a big one is her autobiography, which she did write and tell us her story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a mix of her story and then just like what it was like running this team in the height of Black baseball, like when this league was really, really thriving, the Negro National League in the late 30s and early 40s, particularly those World War II years, where now all of a sudden you've got Black families that got extra money because now these defense plants can't be like, we don't want you to work here. They're like, we need all hands on deck. Okay, yes, we will give the Black people jobs. Fine. So now you got Black people that have money to go to baseball games more so than before. And so now these teams like have the cash to do all the things to pay their players more, to bring on more players, all those things. But so she really recorded that really special time in the history of Black baseball, but also what happened as we come out of War II and get into integration and what that downfall looked like, that really, really fast spiral into obsolescence. So yeah, we had a copy of it, an original copy at the museum, and I kind of hijacked it. I ain't gonna lie. It was an artifact, and I was like, can I read this? So yeah.
That is so good. That is so good. So I'm going to jump around a little bit because you said something that was really important. When you read this book, and y'all have got to read this book, you're cheering for the Negro League, and that's awesome. But first of all, I mean, we kind of know how it inevitably ends, and there is this irony and this tension. And I think that you capture it really beautifully and responsibly and responsively, that we as readers, we want the Negro League to succeed, but we also want the Black race to succeed, and integration is part of that. It's this measure of success, and yet in so doing, this thing, when we break the barrier, we destroy something really important. How did you managed to so beautifully walk this line in this narrative?
Well, thank you for the compliment. I just, I don't know that I was approaching it in the sense that, like, how do I do it beautifully? I just wanted to do it accurately and well. Hindsight is 2020. And this is where, like, even myself, like, as I'm writing, I'm like, oh, Wendell Smith, you sell out. Like, I ain't gonna lie. Like, right.
We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about that. No, I know there's so many things to talk about. There's so many things to talk about. Yes.
Right. But then if I put on, this is where we have to give grace to our elders, right? They didn't know what they didn't know. And we find, like, even today, in the midst of, like, these social justice movements, like, everybody has a different position. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody has a different path that they are comfortable walking. And so for Wendell Smith, it is, yes, full steam ahead, integration. This is what success looks like. I was like, hold on. Like, if integration is the end goal, fine. I'm not taking that away. I'm not saying that we don't deserve to be on the field with them, but there surely has to be a better way. Like this, we're giving all the milk away for free type of situation. And I mean, she had the foresight that this wasn't going to bode well for Black baseball. And, I think there's a lot to be said for that, even when at the time, I mean, I'm really glad you said that, because it is, in doing this for kids, I don't want to tell kids what to think. I don't want to tell kids what to believe. I want to present all the data, right? So if kids are reading this and it's like, tag yourself, right? Like, who are you in the situation? Are you Effa? Are you Smith? Are you, are you Jackie Robinson? But ultimately, I think that they made the moves that they did with the information at their disposal. And I think also that they chose to believe the best. I 100% think that if they knew what Major League Baseball would look like in 2021 with so few Black players, I mean, hardly any managers, executives, no owners.
The whole time, the entirety of history.
I think that they would reassess, but I think that they wanted to believe the best of Major League Baseball. I think they believed that just getting us there, and this is where we have the conversation even now about what's happening in the world. Is representation enough? Is representation enough? Is Jackie being there enough? I think they wanted to believe that it was, and then they saw quickly that it wasn't. But they didn't, this is one of those moments where it's like, have we come up against this? This is the first professional sport league that is looking at this kind of situation. And also, this is where Black people hold power collectively. This is where we hold power collectively. So we are, for all intents and purposes, in uncharted territory here. This is before Brown versus Board. This is before Rosa Parks and the Montgomery. Like, we are literally feeling in the dark. Like, nobody really knows how to approach this. Now, in 2021, and we come up against situations like this, well, this is where I'm going to be like, y'all ain't read the book. Clearly. Okay. This is part of it too, right? Like, yes. We cannot, as a people, and I'm so far off of your original question, I believe.
I'm having fun. No, you're good.
But, like, we can't keep fighting the same fight generation to generation.
That is so
Our
true.
elders fought this fight and they did the best that they could with the information that they had. But now it's a different situation, right?
Yeah.
Now we got to know that when we have the power, because we had the power there. We had the power.
Yeah.
We have our
Can we
own
talk about
power.
that? Can we talk about that power dynamic? Because and I know that the audience, y'all haven't read it, but y'all are gonna read it. Y'all need to go and get this book. Is that you also talk about the intersections of class within the Black community, that there are Black people, there are beautiful, the photographs are so beautiful, and seeing these, they're not just Black and they're not just educated, they're rich and they got swag, right? Like, and they have, we have our own kind of secret economy going with the numbers game, which is the greatest like couple of pages I've ever read in the history of
Yeah.
ever. And I'm trying to find a picture of, I want to find a picture of Mr. Foster. And there's tragedy in here too, which I just, oh man. Anyway, I want to say this to say that there were Black people with money, and those Black people had power, and they used it really specifically, and they used it with a vision in mind, right? And so the stratification of economics, you would think would play this like more nefarious role, but it didn't. There was still this interconnectivity, and that part also fueled this league, and it fueled the egos, and it fueled kind of the crazy, and we know that, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can never get rid of that black, white, purple, whatever. It's always gonna be some egos in the mix for sure.
That's so much fun. That was so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, but that's real, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this book too because I have kids. I have 4 kids, and when we start talking about Black history, it's Black History Month. It's always the same people. It's also always these stories either from slavery or the civil rights movement. Like we are literally either like on a plantation or we are like getting hosed down and chased by dogs. And I'm like,
so yeah.
Like where is the in between? So yeah, like we were around in the 20s and 30s and 40s, and we were doing the doggone thing, and we were owning
thriving. We were. There were great things happen. Yeah.
We were thriving, and the beauty that comes from the ashes of segregation is that you have those Black people with wealth, with resources, and they are side by side. So there's no like now you got your bread and you out the hood and you gone on with the white people in the suburbs. Like that wasn't a thing. Like they don't care how much money you got. Y'all gonna all be together. The beauty of that is that yes, we get these teams and these leagues that come out of it that are all about the community. We have these people that have a little bit more than everybody else that are reinvesting into that community so that we still have this cohesion, even though yes, there is tons of stratification amongst lines of wealth and education and all that.
And color, which is the other thing that you do not shy away from in this book.
Listen, I tried to throw all the things at the book.
I mean, you really did, but I and this is a book for young readers, right? It's a young adult book.
Yeah.
And you talk about color, like colorism, and what that means within the Black community. And it's clearly a conscious choice. And I'm curious to know, first of all, I got 2 questions about this. My first question is, you made a choice, and I'd love to know like when that choice was made and why you made that choice. And then the second question I have is, how did your publishers deal with that? Was there pushback to talk about colorism the way that you do in this book for this audience? And if there was, what did that sound like? What did that feel like? And how did it get to stay?
Yeah. I love these. So before I published this book, I would always I'd attend like author talks or whatever. And like people are asking questions like, when you thought about this theme or whatever, and I'm like, were they thinking about that? Like, I know when I'm writing, like sometimes the themes emerge, even if I don't go into it with that intention. And I feel like the colorism thing is one of those things. Like, so when you ask that, I love that you asked that because yes, that is a theme that emerges because it has to, if we're talking about this period in American history and in Black history. I mean, at HBCUs, at historically Black colleges and universities, they were holding paper bags up to their own Black people before they let them in the school. We're not going to talk about the real, about, you know, if my part of my motivation for writing this book is because I feel that our stories have been whitewashed, that we're not telling the truth, I'm not going to come in and then also still slant the thing too. Like, I'm going to tell the whole truth. And colorism was a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal in the Black community still. Like, let's be real. Yeah. And I think this is one of those, maybe like those dirty little secrets. I think white people inherently know, like, you know, when I tell people all the time, if everybody in the door look like me, you're not that inclusive. Like, I'm sorry. I'm just going, like, thank you for letting me in, but with my light skin and my curly hair, but everybody can't look like me. That doesn't really count. But I think it is important to show what that looks like in the Black community, what that looks like for the advantages that people have when you're talking about wealth and education and all of that other stuff. So that now when people, if we're here in 2020, 2021, and we're talking about how to fix things, yeah, you got to get real deep. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate that now we're having to do all that digging. And I know the white people are so overwhelmed because it's like, it's just too much. But yeah, we haven't talked about it. We haven't openly talked about colorism, even though, yes, even in the 20s and 30s and 40s, this was a big deal. So yeah, I wanted to give this story the respect that it deserved and tell it truthfully, as I said, and with all of the necessary nuance. My editor was incredible. There was no pushback on that. If anything, there was like, I think, you know, initially it was, okay, let's do more. Like, let's do more of the context. I think we were both in agreement on that. I think as we got further along, it was like, okay, you can't really do all the things. Like, I know you want to, but yeah, I'm like, if, again, this is a book for kids, but also that adults can get into too. But these kids, have they heard of the Negro Leagues before? Like, what is their frame of reference for that? Can I comfortably or effectively even talk about Effa's story and her significance as a woman doing these things in the 30s and 40s without talking about why we have a Negro National League in the first place? Can I talk about this Negro National League of the 1930s and 40s without talking about Rube Foster's in the 1920s? Can I talk about Rube Foster getting to the point where he wants to organize without giving his background as one of the best pitchers of his time on Black? I can't do any of that without doing all of that, right?
Yeah.
I can't talk about Effa and who Effa becomes, not just as this baseball mogul, but also as this advocate and activist for the Black community without talking about her moving to Harlem after graduating from high school and being in the midst of all of that. There's the Renaissance, and there's W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, and they're doing all of this. And like, I gotta talk about all of that because
she had the best neighbors. Like, what do you even mean? Like, I read that and I was like, are you for serious? Like, I mean, you know, when you know that they were all just walking around together at the same time in the same place, but then it's another thing when you read it, you're like, oh man, she really was neighbors with all of them. Like, all of them.
And this is like where, like, for me as an author, it's like, is there anything on record about like how she felt when she saw, you know, Marcus Garvey parading through the streets of Harlem? Like, no, but was she impacted by that? Was she there in that environment? Like 100%. Like, you can't be there any way that, you know, in the same way that like I can't tell your story and talk about what it was like, you know, for you over the last couple of years without talking about this pandemic, without talking about the racial protests. Like, it is a part of it, whether she ever went on record about it or not. So yeah, throwing all the things at it, and my editor was like, yeah, we need to do it. Let's do it.
That's amazing.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned that you don't start with the National Negro League. There's this whole history before of you know, men just trying something else and men getting on buses and going on their circuits and you know, these rich Black men who are like, yep, I can make this happen, but I can't make this happen. And you know, I like that guy, but I don't like that guy. Yeah. And that's, you know, again, with this really deep and rich history of Black people in this like really limited space of time doing amazing and innovative things.
Yeah.
And so I mean, there's you give us a certain cast of characters, right? But I is there anybody who didn't make it in the book who you're like, oh man, like this is a person, but they, we just had to leave them on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of players. Like, I really felt bad that like I didn't really I didn't have the space. Like, if you notice, I don't even have like a proper acknowledgments where I like thank my agent and my editor and all that. Cause like my editor was like, it's fine. I know you appreciate me. Like, we don't have any more space for this thing. Cause we don't want, this is a kid's book and we don't want kids to be intimidated by the size of it. So trying to keep all those things in mind. But yeah, so on the one hand, it's like, yeah, there are so many more players that I could have written about besides, like I do feel like Josh and Satch get a lot of the shine a lot of the time. But also I wanted to leave a lot of space for the executives who really never get talked about, right? Like when we're talking about the history of Black sports, we do talk about the athletes. And I wanted to leave a lot of space for these savvy businessmen and women who created the space for there to be a Satchel Paige and a Josh Gibson. These people don't ever get any attention. And when we talk about now that Major League Baseball is saying, okay, well, we're elevating the status of the Negro Leagues to like major league level. Yeah, that doesn't just include the players, that also includes these executives. Now, Effa Manley didn't just run a championship team. She ran a major league level championship.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah, I wanted to do that. The Negro Leagues don't exist without Gus Greenlee being like, look,
Gus Greenlee.
He's the homie. Listen, Gus Greenlee, he's the homie.
We can't spoil for people, but Gus Greenlee is the man. Like Gus Greenlee is amazing, and Mr. Posey is amazing. I'm gonna call him Mr. Posey because his
I know Cumberland.
I know.
Cum is kind of wild.
Cumberland. I was like, what? Yeah, I guess it made it in the book, so we're good. I mean, it was short for Cumberland. There's not much we can do about that. I suspect there's going to be some young people snickering about that one. I'm not going to lie. I suspect this is going to be in a high school library, and somebody's going to be like, "Guess what I found in that book?"
No, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I mean, my babies are too little, so hopefully they don't know anything about that. Anyway.
Another really interesting part about this, and are the characters of these characters are real people, but are the white people, right? And specifically these. So you've got these agents, okay, fine, and we talk about the agents, and I think that they're really interesting, and I like that you don't. They're not nefarious, horrible, like shadowy, the white man is trying to destroy the Negro League. That's not what's happening. Yeah. Except then you do have these two commissioners, right, of the Major League Baseball League, of which, one of them is like, we never said you couldn't play. Who said you couldn't play? It wasn't me. And you're like, Yeah. So for context, you refer a lot to what's called the gentleman's agreement that prevents Black players from crossing into the major leagues until all of a sudden it's broken. Maybe for this audience, could you tell us a little bit about what the gentleman's agreement is, when it was made, and who decided it didn't matter anymore?
Yeah. So in the 1880s, I mean, beginning in the mid 1800s, when baseball is really starting to become America's pastime, like people are playing. That's Black people, white people, everybody's playing. And for a while, like there were Black players who played on white teams, but you had some white players who were like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, aren't we better than them? Like, how are they? Like, I don't know if I want them on my team. And so ultimately, the short of it is that you get these executives, these team owners, and they've got their burgeoning league, and they agree collectively to not sign any more Black players to appease, your Cap Ansons or, any of these other white players or fans or whatever who feel comfortable that the Negroes aren't effectively in their place. And in their place means away from us. Okay. But it's a gentleman's agreement because it's never a written thing. And this speaks to what happens in this country, right? Like, we get a couple decades beyond this, and the people who made the agreement ain't even around anymore. But now you got people going along with the agreement just because it's always been the agreement. And is this not always the thing? Like, You don't have to have built the structure to be complicit in upholding it. Either you're tearing it down or you're not. And so this thing persists well into, until essentially Branch Rickey signs Jackie Robinson in October of 45. And yeah, it was never this written rule. You got, particularly during World War II, where you've got, we're fighting for civil rights overseas, and Black people have none in the States. And we start to see this really, really heavy push against baseball's color line. That was always the thing. Well, people, this is Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was the commissioner at the time. Well, they can sign, any of these owners or general managers, they're free to sign whoever they want to. But it has become, by this point, the color line is firmly drawn. And it takes someone, like Branch Rickey to say, okay, I'm going to do what I want to do. This is after he's gotten permission from the owners, the trustees of the team. And it is with the sole intent of building a better club so that they can win more ball games and make more money. Like, let's be clear. But yes,
but
that means
to be clear, he didn't do it for the, out of the goodness of his heart. He did it for that. And he also did it with these 9 crazy rules, right? That also really matter. Like, the way that you lay out Jackie's, the way that he was signed, which is a little funky. I didn't know that. Thank you for teaching me. I did not know that.
It's a lot of funky.
It's a lot of funky. Wow. Like, it's, it's just like, wow, we came this close to not having Jackie Robinson. And then you lay out for us just how much of a sacrifice Jackie had to make this thing happen. And then in the context of Jackie's crossing means the demise of this thing that made him possible is so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, I just had no idea how heartbreaking Jackie Robinson's story was until I read it through your narrative.
Yeah. It's interesting because, Jackie Robinson, like, by far, if you would have asked other Negro League players during that time, like, was he the best? Like, not even close. Like, he comes out of UCLA, like, baseball is his worst sport. Like, he's a 4-sport athlete. Baseball is the worst. But he was perfect for this. He was perfect for this because he's new enough. He's only been in the Negro Leagues for a season. So he's new enough that he is not married to the structure of the Negro Leagues. He does not have any affinity or loyalty for Black baseball as this institution, like a Satchel Paige maybe would have, because Satchel Paige was there when that was literally the only option. Like, we're so far off from integration, like, buckle in because you're going to be riding with the Black folk for a long time. He doesn't have that. He's new to this. Also, he's coming out of UCLA. Like, he's been around white people before. What is this all Black stuff? I can't get with it. At the same time, Jackie Robinson is the guy who is court-martialed for refusing to go to the back of the bus while he's in the Army. He's that guy. So this is a guy who is about his people, who will go toe-to-toe for his people. So when Branch Rickey comes in, and we can get into the compensation or lack thereof, in a second, but just the logistics of getting somebody to agree to be tortured. This is what it is. Sign on the dotted line and volunteer to be tortured. You've got to have somebody that is willing to fight for his people and who legitimately believes. This is where I go back to, like, they were doing the best they had with what they had at the time. Best they could with what they had. He believed that he would sacrifice and that the floodgates would open. Like, Jackie's not, I don't believe Jackie is doing this for Jackie. I need somebody that's strong enough to not get mad, to not fight back when they call you, or when they slide in spikes up. I need somebody that can go. That's who I'm looking for. Jackie says, okay, because he's like, I'm going to do this for everybody that came behind me. And they didn't really let that many people come behind him. That is the tragedy of it, is that we let this man's sacrifices be in vain because of how integration was done. Was Jackie complicit in that? 100%. But again, what was his motivation versus what was Branch Rickey's motivation?
Yes.
So yeah, Branch Rickey 100% takes advantage of the fact that he's got the guy who will sacrifice for his people, who will fight for his people. 100%. 100%. He couldn't have got Jackie Robinson. He couldn't have got Satchel Paige in that room.
No. He couldn't have gotten a bunch of people in that room. That's what we learned.
My own play, homie. Like, we said barnstorming. Like, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. But Jackie is new enough and young enough and green enough that he goes all in.
It doesn't. It hurts your feelings. It hurts. It does. It hurts your feelings. You're like, wow. It is so. Yeah, there's a rawness to all of it, all of that confluence of context on this one man. And we revere him. I guess I saw all these Facebook posts yesterday about him. Like, we're all doing the thing. Like, I get that, but like, wow, there's so much on him in that time, on this man. It's just y'all have got to read this book. Like, I just can't express to you how important this book is. Like, it's just so crazy. Somebody just asked in the Q&A, my friend Melanie asked in the Q&A if you wouldn't mind reading a favorite passage from the book, if you wouldn't mind.
Hold on, I don't even have a book with me. Hold on. I didn't I don't really read my stuff after.
Oh.
That goes for books and articles and all the things. Listen,
I don't blame you. If you don't have one of it, it's totally okay.
Anything. Let me hold on. I just pulled the PDF up, but I don't know. Do you have a passage you want
to read? I have. So there was this really, and it was toward the end of the book though, and I don't want to ruin it for people about
it'll be
just
fun. About
his sacrifice. And it was just, wow, it was so, like, some of this is really hard. That's why. And there's stuff in the author's your author's note is so awesome too, and that's why. So can we, while I'm looking for the passage, can we talk about Wendell Smith and Black media, and how Black media really, really matters in this book? Again, like, I love this. It's so Black. It's Black from the beginning to the end. It's really all encapsulated.
It's like all Black everything.
Honestly. All Black everything from the beginning to the end. It's so awesome. And again, with just this history of like, just remember, just in case y'all didn't know, Black people had a Black version of everything for a hot minute. We had our own media, we had our own restaurants, we had our own hotels, we had our own designers, we had our own leaders, we had our own rich people, we had our own poor people, we had our own lottery, we had our own
lottery, y'all. Like, I mean, the numbers were to the 30s and 40s what the weed game is now, right? Like, they were so mad at the Black people for like dealing it on the corner, and now they done legalize that joint so the white people can make all the money. Like, this is literally the numbers game.
Tell him.
I'm just saying.
Can you tell him about the numbers game? Can you just tell him? Because the numbers game is really interesting. That was a fun part of the book.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's where Greenlee comes in, and that's why it's also so awesome. Go.
So many so the numbers game is important because this is essentially like neighborhood lotteries. It is essentially how these men have enough money to front a baseball team, to sustain a baseball team through all of, I mean, as difficult as it is for individual Black people and Black families to survive, in the height of segregation and Jim Crow. It is difficult for Black businesses, particularly if you're owning a Black baseball team and you don't own your own stadium, you're giving up such a large chunk of your revenue to the white baseball team owner in town who you're renting stadiums from. Right? So there is this constant shoestring. So yeah, you need cash. Like, you're not going to the bank to get money. So yeah, a lot of these guys made their money running numbers. And it was technically illegal, but the reality is that a lot of these guys, I mean, they weren't really nefarious in that regard. Like, they took that money and they invested it back in their community. They invested it in their team, which, these Black baseball teams really in and of themselves, like, provided really this break from the monotony and the trial of being Black in America during this period. Like, you go to a Black game with your people, like, you go through the turnstiles and everybody's decked to the nines, and
we're decked to the nines.
It is
these
an
pictures.
Experience. It is an experience. So Yeah, running numbers provided that opportunity for a lot of these guys to have the money to be able to do that. It also plays a role, though, in Branch Rickey later being like, well, of course I don't have to honor these contracts or deal fairly with these people because they're just a bunch of thugs, they're a bunch of hoodlums, they're not really. So yeah, it's an interesting and important piece of this whole puzzle when we talk about both the rise of the Negro Leagues and its fall.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to read just a little snippet of Effa because we've been talking about everybody but Effa, and I feel bad about that.
There's that.
There is that. So I'm just gonna read. There's just so much, and the thing is that Effa. It's not that Effa's not the main character of this story because she is, but she weaves in and out.
Yeah,
Which
I
is really...
definitely I've had people comment on that, but that was something really, when the first couple reviews came in and it was like, wait a minute, it's not just Effa. And I mean, I texted my editor and I'm like, we felt good about this approach. And I mean, I do feel good about it now, but for a minute it was kind of like, oh my gosh, yeah, were people just expecting Effa? Because I can't do that again. Anticipating the questions that are going to be asked when people come to this, children, adults, because they just don't have the context. To me, as an author, it is my job to answer those questions on the page before they have time to ask them. Like, I don't want a kid reading this and then having to put the book down every couple pages because they need to go look up this other thing.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of other stuff, but it is 100% Effa story, but there's a lot of other stuff in there.
There's a lot. And it's so much, and it's so good. So I'm just gonna read. Okay, so I'm gonna read a little bit, and then I'm gonna skip over a little bit. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. Melanie, just stay with me. So when Effa Louise Brooks Manley was born in Philadelphia on March 27th, 1897, she was thrust into a world obsessed with color. There was the blue-green of no, that's not what I want. I want to talk about her mother. Where did she go? She went to the next page. As a young girl just beginning to understand the ways of a segregated world, Effa was still many years from becoming the woman who would lead protests and boycotts, denouncing racism and demanding that Black baseball players and executives be shown the same respect as their white counterparts. But even as a child, she knew such rules were ridiculous, and she needed only to look in the mirror for proof. Effa's mother, Bertha Brooks, was a mulatto woman, meaning that she was both Black and white. She had both Black and white ancestry. Before Effa was born, Bertha had been married to a Black man with whom she birthed 4 children. A later marriage to another Black man resulted in Effa's 2 younger siblings. In the middle was Effa, her skin noticeably pale next to the deeper hues of her brothers and sisters. Effa's mother was a skilled seamstress who often worked in the homes of white families, sewing everything from common pants and shirts to the fanciest gowns and tuxedos. While employed by a wealthy white stockbroker named John Marcus Bishop, Mrs. Brooks had a sexual encounter with her boss, and Effa's birth was a result. When she arrived, Effa carried the genes of both her mother and father, her very existence an olive-tinted representation of 2 worlds forbidden from mixing, which is just, first of all, this is just a beautiful passage of writing, just first of all. Second of all, you do this is a book for children, and you tell us a truthful thing, right? Like there's a lot in here. Nothing from your editor about that, huh?
I think we talked about how to address the encounter, being very mindful of the fact that it could have been consensual, but really could have not been consensual. But yeah, that was probably, Megan, shout out to Megan. I don't know if she's here today, but she was really, really great about like letting me do the things and letting me tell this important story the way it needed to be told. So yeah, white girl came correct. No.
I don't do this justice. There's so much in here. There's this really, I want to, oh yes, that's right, Octavius Cato. Now I'm just going through the book again. Like y'all have got to, the swag and the style of these folk, though, like the swag. And there are some photos, and I'm sure there were photos that didn't make it. Were there any photos that didn't make it and you're like, man, I wish this
There were some photos that there is a photo of, so you're talking about like style and swag and, you know, the going to the baseball games, how everybody like really dressed up, like as if they were going to church on Sunday morning. But this is how Black people moved. Yes, 100%. But this is how Black people moved, like in general, a lot of the times, right? Like you're already fighting against so many prejudices and so many assumptions about who you are as a Black person, that you are less than, that you are uneducated, that you are unclean, like all these things. And so in many ways, our dress was the way to combat that, at least at first glance. Like, yeah, I want you to get to know me and talk to me and all of that, but I'm going to shut some of this down just because when you see me, you're going to see me fully put together. And there was a picture of the Eagles, I want to say like late 30s. I don't remember the year exactly, but it's the whole roster, like the guys sitting in suits, and they were so clean, like so fresh and so clean. And we couldn't get the light, like we couldn't find out like the source, like where to license the photo from. So I was really upset about that because just looked delicious, all of them. It's delicious.
I'm so sad. Like I'm super sad about that. No, this was about legality, but we didn't get that.
I know, right? Those doggone laws.
That is heartbreaking. No, that breaks my heart. Yeah. So first of all, there's only 8 minutes left in this hour, and I can't believe it. I don't know how it happened. This has been amazing. This has been as good as I knew it was going to be. I just can't believe it. So I have 2 questions left. We talk about Effa, and then there's all these men. There's no other women except for her mom, who makes this brief appearance and then kind of disappears. And I'm curious to know if we know anything about her relationship with other women. She was a trailblazer. She was doing a man's job in a man's world. But she was living during the Harlem Renaissance. She was a society woman. Do you know anything about how other women, especially other Black women, regarded her?
She I mean, going back to before she was in baseball, when she leads the protest, the boycott of the department store in Harlem, she does that with a group of women. She forms the Harlem Women's Association. There are, even, I mean, throughout her career, even after baseball, she is, constantly on the society pages, because here she is, this gorgeous woman, in all these beautiful gowns, and like a woman about town. And yeah, there are quotes of women talking about how beautiful she was, and just, how she walked into a room and really commanded it. But that's an interesting question. Like, if we look back on Effa's files and like what was left behind, right, after she leaves Newark and like moves off to California, there's a ton of correspondence. And it is like 90% of it, like the vast majority of it, is baseball stuff. It is with other owners and, like with players, talking about like, this is how much I'm going to pay you. No, I'm not giving you a raise. What are you thinking of asking me? Like, there's a lot of that, but she didn't have the one girlfriend that it's like we've got reams of letters that they sent back and forth. I think Effa was certainly, I don't think that she didn't get along with women. I imagine that maybe there was probably some cattiness, just knowing how women can be sometimes. But I also think that she was super tunnel visioned on, particularly when she was in baseball, running this team, running it well, winning ball games, ultimately winning a championship, and then trying to figure out how to protect her business in light of integration.
Wow. Is that a sad thing, do you think, that there wasn't that one girlfriend? You think that would have made a difference? Like, I'm just thinking about this life now and, what it means in 2021. Like, you need a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure she had those it's again, if this was historical fiction and I could fill in some of those gaps, I'd probably give her a girlfriend. But we can't even, with the nonfiction approach, I can't take those liberties if I don't see the record of that. She the Newark Eagles secretary, was a woman who worked with her for many years. So I imagine that they had a pretty great relationship, especially considering how long she worked for the team. So I don't know. I do think that she was very, and this is not to say that, like, if you are a powerful, ambitious type A type of woman, that you don't care about female friendships. I am not saying that at all, because I consider myself that type of a woman in many ways, but my friendships are also very important to me. But again, if we're talking about historical record, what she went on record about was the things that were like right in front of her. And if I'm writing this book about, particularly this moment around the rise and fall of Negro Leagues baseball, then yeah, that was, these are the things that are at the forefront, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right, last question. And it just, this has been so great. This has just been affirming and all the things. So this book is written for young people.
Yes.
But I'm an adult and I loved it. I read it cover to cover and really enjoyed it, really sincerely, and learned a lot and loved this book. But you wrote it for young people.
Yeah.
And you allude to the why in your author's note. But I just want to make sure that the folks who are here right now can hear a little bit about the why. Why young people? Why this story for young people?
Yeah, I don't remember what I wrote, but I will say I have an answer. It might not be the same one. They are both valid though. Okay, they both count. This one and the one in the book. But yeah, I think it's important. I think as we talk about this world that we live in now and all of the things that are wrong with it and the potential to fix those things for the future, I think we have to really understand where we come from. We have to understand the scope of the problem before we can even remotely come up with a workable solution. We are dealing with adults, in these Capitol buildings, in these corporate boardrooms that don't really know what's happening. They don't really understand, how we got to this moment, why people got as pissed as they got in 2020. Like, I don't understand. I'm not that racist. Here again are the structures that are in place. Either you're tearing them down or you're complicit in upholding them. There's really no other option here. So 100%, I want kids to understand now as they're kids, so that as they become older and they are the ones who take up space later in these Capitol buildings and in these boardrooms, that they can help us build a better future because they have a better understanding of the past. Also, for Black kids, include mine. And I have 4 athletes. Like, my husband and I, we are taxi drivers. This is what we do. We are at basketball or gymnastics or football or travel baseball, or like, we're doing all the things. And, I love that, my kids have visions for doing this long term. My 9-year-old is like, I'm going to be the first athlete to win a World Series championship, a Super Bowl, and an NBA championship. I'm doing all the things. And I'm like, go ahead. But I also want our kids to know you can want to be Satch and you can want to be Josh, but you can also want to be Gus Greenlee. And you can also want to be Effa Manley. And we have done these things, and it is not so far outside of the realm of possibility. Yeah. That we shouldn't consider it, right? Seeing is believing and all these other things, and we need to know what's happening. Well, we might not want to look at the current landscape in professional sports. We might not want to look at Major League Baseball right now in terms of setting your sights on this, right? This is me coming out of undergrad and saying, well, who is the woman who did it? And it took me looking at the Negro Leagues to see, here is a woman in that spot who is making these decisions, who is running this team. It took me going to the Negro League. So, but it was life-changing for me. So yeah, how many owners are there across Black owners are there across professional sports? But if we look at the Negro Leagues, If we look at the Negro Leagues. So yeah, I want to, again, we weren't just picking cotton and getting chased by dogs. Like there is a whole lot of other stuff in there. And I want our kids to aspire to the front offices, to ownership boxes as much as they aspire to be the best athlete on the field. I'm not mad at you wanting to be an athlete though. Like I need to stress that all the time. I think I have a lot of conversations with parents, particularly Black parents, and it's like, oh no, we don't. Nah, like I'm not gonna be mad. Like you want to be LeBron, go do your thing. Like I'm not mad at that. But yeah, we can also own the team. What would it mean if LeBron played for a team that was owned by Black people?
Yes.
What would it mean?
What would it mean? What would it mean if he took that money? Why doesn't he own his team yet? I don't understand.
We don't even have the time, girl, to even.
Okay, I'm just like, yo, don't you have all the money though? Like, do you have all the money? Do you have all the money? Like, okay. This has been the best thing. This has been the best thing ever. Do you have any other projects? Do I get to talk to you again in the near-ish future about a new book? Please say
absolutely. You get to talk to me about a new book that has not been announced yet. But it's another sports book. It's fiction though. It's also for kids.
Oh.
But it has not been announced. It shall be announced probably in the next couple months. But okay. I would love to come back and talk.
Please come back and see me.
Well, and I hear that you have your own book that you're working on.
I am.
That I'm gonna have to talk to you about your own book.
Oh, we'll see about all that. I see some of us have agents and editors. Some of us are still in the query stage. Still in the query stage. Still like, listen, would you please maybe read my book? That's what I
already know. I'll talk to you from a year from now, and you'll be like in line edits, like about to send that thing, to the press. So
from your lips to God's ears. That's what I need. That is what I need. This book is amazing. It's a gift. It's so special. This conversation was special, but this book was really special. And for all y'all who are here, and for all y'all who are gonna watch this later, this book, Baseball's Leading Lady, is a read that you need to read for yourself, and then a read that you need to hand to the young person in your life. This is the one that you want to get at silverunicornbooks.com and send to young people in your life, and just to have it at their doorstep during Black History Month, or during Women's History Month, which is like the next month after,
or when baseball season starts in April.
Or during World Series time in the fall or whatever. I'm just saying, like, this is a book for all seasons. It's basically what we're trying to tell you. That's what we're trying to tell you. Yeah. It's just, wow. Thank you. Just thank you. Any just last thoughts before I let you go? I know it's been a long day for you. You're like,
no, you're fine. It's been really, really fun. I'm never mad about talking about Effa, but yeah, this has been fun. So I hope I made sense in all of the things, and that people are ready to pick this up and read it. And like you said, hand it off to some young people, but everybody read it. Adults, before you hand it off, read the thing.
You need to read this thing. You need to read this thing, and then you need to hand it off to somebody. Then you need to buy 2 copies for your school library. This is a book to go get, and go order it at silverunicorn.com or get it at an independent bookstore near you. I can't wait to see you again, Andrea. I cannot wait. Like, seriously.
Aww, this has been really, I had lots of fun. Listen, I was dragging. I had the time zone all mixed up. But this was I feel good about this.
This was awesome. This was just, thank you so much. Thank you, friends, for being here with us. Go get this book. And then come see us again. We have other events for the rest of the month. Visit us at silverunicornbooks.com to register for other things, including a book launch with Nicole L'Esperance, who has another launch. She's debuting a young adult fiction book called The Wide Starlight. I believe that's not next week, but the week after. Come see. Oh, and we also have Heather Lang, who is with Dr. Margaret Lawson, who to talk about jungle exploration. There's all sorts of really cool things happening. So come visit our website, silverunicornbooks.com, and order that book. And this book, just once again, it's so pretty. I just want to make sure you see it. And I know I'm rambling, so I'm going to get off because I'm a tired mama, just like you are. Just thank you so much. I just think you're amazing. And this was the best.
Aw.
Happy Black History Month to you.
Yes.
Congratulations on your book. And I hope you have many more fun interviews just like this.
I mean, I can only hope.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're fun. So I feel like it's going to be fun. Like, I just feel like it's going to be the best.
Thank
All right,
you.
everybody. Have a great night. See you soon. Bye, everybody.